Greetings! It's I, Titus Naravan Dracovin, your Lord and Emperor here at the Dracovin Empire, and, of course, welcome! If you, of course, are joining me live now, hey Twitch, you've been here, glad you're still here, but you can all say hi to our YouTube side if you're joining me later on, after a couple days when this video is uploaded over there. Today, we're once more diving into Pathfinder and Golarion lore. Yes! We are learning more about that, and also, you know, the normal support on whatever channel you're on, the following on Twitch, subscribing, ringing the bell, liking the video on YouTube. Keep those in mind, wink wink. So my question will be an interesting one because it involves a specific adventure path. Have you played the Tyrant's Grasp? Because the Tyrant's Grasp introduces us to our topic today, Xopatl. Xopatl is one of the very few nations that not only we know about, but we have a great deal of knowledge about because of this book in Arcadia. I've talked about some nations in the past in Grund, Kazmaron, Avastian, and even some in TNZ. But Arcadia, we have very little information out. And it is noticeable that, yes, there is real-world connections to TNZ. Is very Asian-inspired. Grund is very African-inspired. Kazmaron is very, you know, Middle Eastern, basically southwestern Asian. Avastian is very European. And in this case, Arcadian is very Americans. And when we talk about Xopatl today, it is very Mesoamerican. It's very, you know, Aztec. And in fact, some people that are of descent from that region worked on this, so a lot of the major images that I'm going to be using today for today's video were provided by a worker at Paizo who did images from the book here, and I grabbed a bunch of them that they provide when they talked about working on this very book we're going to be using for it, because it gives us a great deal of information about Xopatl. So, I'm just, I can get their name, which I should do, and I should have done before. There we go. I didn't spell it right. Of course I didn't. But yeah, anyway, it will be Luis Loza, who's at Donato Classic, was the one that worked on this. So I will be using and showing off some images from her work there, or her that she showed off there. I want to make sure to appropriately mention people when to mention them, you know. So let's take a look at that book, and this is the one, Tyrant's Grasp, Born by the Sun's Grace. So if you want to get a book that deals with Xopatl, an adventure that deals with Xopatl, this is where you'd go. This is our major source of it, and it's a pretty good source of information. It does provide us a large chunk of stuff, but it's one of those things that is, unfortunately, our only source. The adventure there and the pages there provide us with a lot of this information here, and a lot of information on a bunch of small cities and locations that you can visit there, too. It's got a big book area in the book dedicated to it. But we're going to talk about not everything from that book today, but we're going to go over a bunch of it so you have an idea about what Xopatl is like, and, you know, whether or not you'd want to use it in an adventure, or maybe if you want to just do, you know, this adventure here, either individually or part of the adventure path, because usually these adventure path books you can do on your own. So, let's start with the basics of Xopatl, and who rules Xopatl. So it's a nation of magic and wonder that is in southern Arcadia. Prior to the Age of Lost Omens, it owed its prosperity to the Veins of Creation, which was a network of ley lines that provided magic items and limitless energy to its people. With its source at the Kumaro tree at the Tumjaba Mountains. We'll get into that a little bit. That's part of the history. So Xopatl is a democratic nation. They do not have a single head of state. Instead, their role is filled by the chosen council that consists of 19 elected officials in biannual elections. Everyday matters across Xopatl are handled by another body, the House of Elders. Cities are allowed to govern themselves, but have to send at least one representative to the House of Elders to advocate on behalf of the population. And small towns are allowed to choose nearby cities to represent as their own also. So the chosen council does not have an individual leader of any sort. It's 19 individuals, and one is chosen from each of the nation's major settlements. So if another settlement would grow up to be a major settlement, it would be assumed that it would probably join with them. It does a lot of that. It's the entire nation ideas. We go to that House of Elders for day-to-day. Infrastructure, mundane things, education, routine government functions. Those are all House of Elders. And again, individual cities might self-govern a little differently, but there's definitely this connection to the overall democratic way of thinking in there. And the House of Elders, of course, again, does not have an individual leader as of that. And the exact number in the House of Elders is not really defined. It's assumed from, again, because at least every settlement sending someone to the House of Elders, and most cities are, and small towns might send someone, or they might basically connect up with a larger city that's nearby. There's just kind of like idea of how many there actually are. It's kind of a little in flux. Let's talk about the history of Xopatl, because we do know a bunch about it. So during Earthfall, basically part of the Starstone, the big thing that was the big, meteorite that was sent to destroy Golarion, that shattered apart because a god sacrificed their life. Part of that fell into the Mildonase Mountains, which was controlled by Zoltan at the time. A vibrant forest sprang around the crash site, and explorers from Inapaza sought it out. They discovered this mystic stone contained the power to transform them into hero gods. So it had this, hero gods aren't necessarily deities, but they're mortals blessed with mystical powers that elevate them above other people. They're in a lot of cultures, primarily in Arcadia and Ibelos. Goblins have their own goblin hero gods. But yes, there are stories of them in other settlements and stuff too. But this is this section of the world kind of thing. Anyway, with this power, they succeeded from Razlatan and secured Inapaza's independence, which began to mark the Razatlan's decline. Some of these hero gods wished to better understand the stone, settled in the new forest, and learned to control the plants around them. They began to carve out their new land by weathering away the Mildonase Mountains, and they named the country Xopatl, which means Land of Promise. It was a reminder that the gift that allowed them to take Razlatan's grasp, and to be cautious that they don't become like Razlatan. So they allowed Xopatl to flourish during this time period where the Age of Darkness suffered most of Golarion. Basically, that's the important part here. These hero gods, basically using the magic of this stone, this chunk of the Star Stone, were able to continue to flourish during the Age of Darkness. Its arcane botanists mastered the growth of living ley lines, creating the vines of creation. And at the beginning of the Age of Anguis, by now, most of the hero gods had either died or had ascended to actual deity status. But they left Xopatl in a very prosperous state. And their legacy remains, though. Because though they aren't venerated as direct deities or heroes, or hero gods anymore the same way you'd think about them, these people are known as saints to most citizens of Xopatl. They are the living saints that protected them. So now we turn to a period of from negative 1524 AR to 1489 AR, where Xopatl hosted the Aslanti travel, or Aerodin, the one that would become a god, who came there to study the vines of creation. He placed a fragment of soul within the Kamaro tree, allowing him to manipulate the ley lines with much more ease than any of the greatest arcane botanists, who never realized the tree's longevity millennia after was due to the echoes of Aerodin's soul. And he then left Xopatl and eventually became a deity on his own story. But Aerodin's connection with that meant something. Because in 4606, a little over 100 years ago, Aerodin's death caused echoes to unleash a magical feedback that withered the Kamaro tree and shut down the veins of creation. Xopatl was gripped by panic. Their arcane botanists desperately tried to reinvigorate the Kamaro tree, could not do so. Aerodin's dead soul tainted it, and the tree's seeds could not take root. Eventually, the botanists did manage to create a small-scale network of ley lines they still use today, but the true veins of creation are gone, and Xopatl's golden age with it. And since it was discovered that Aerodin was the one that altered the Kamaro tree, his name has been spoken as a foreign who brought ruin to the Xopatl. It's seen in very negatives now because of that. Let's talk about the geography of Xopatl, the lands of it. It's isolated, nestled between the Melodonce Mountains and Lake Tapipalitati. Of course, Razlatan to the north exists still. It's an ancient empire. Again, that's one that we know about. Don't have a lot of information on. Arcadia, we know a little bit about it. It's an ancient empire. It is still there. It's technically still there. Not in great shape, but still there. And Inapasa to the east, and Naumaris to the south. The Mazago Forest stretches along the southwestern coast, and the Jalapans Forest along the northwestern coast. The Forest of Sacred Eye is around the southern Lake Clear waters, and the Forest of Thieves is at its heart. So it's got a lot of natural boundaries which do kind of protect it, and these mountains which kind of put it together there. There's also a couple of interesting features with the Isle of Dreamers, the Valley of the Chosen Children, Veins of Creation, and the Footprints of the Lost Saint, which do exist as interesting features if you want to learn about them. But I don't get into a lot of deep talk about geographical features because it gets into too many details sometimes. Alright. This is an image they were using along with this, and I think it's in the book, so don't complain to me. It's an interesting one. It's very, very that region of the world. And it just shows the influence that it's a parallel culture. Xopatl is seen as a very parallel culture to what would be in the Mexico, Central American region to us today. So keep that in mind. Let's talk about the cities, though. So, of course, we can talk about the capital, which is Gurjaldi. It's the central part of the country. It's a very large city. It was built in the ruins of an ancient hero god settlement. It's known for its fine arts and crafts, productions of tactile productions. There are a lot of Arcadian fashions that actually originate here, because Arcadia does have connections across the sea now. There's the Xopatl Stadium, which is a bound ball stadium with thousands of seats, and it's one of the 7 venues selected by Arcadia's annual bound ball tournament, large enough for tourists to come to the event. Other places are Arpertan, Bundozo, Chilimbi, Clear Waters, which is atop the Lake of Clear Waters. It's a city that's basically kind of on the water, so keep that in mind. It's a very interesting city that way. Garazes City, renowned for its prompt musical style that's named after. Grand Pass, on the cusp of the Melanse Mountains, next to the path that links Xopatl with Inapaza. Hidden Lake, which is concealed within the Forest of Thieves. Has its own magical properties. The Hidden City of Alchemists. High Isle, with its sister city Low Isle, where it provides a lot of seafood to Xopatl on the coastline. Just put those together. Narula, which was a logging city that once very powerful. Jotoro, Talapas, renowned for its brewing and distillation. Tulapan, along with Orjoto and Ziplatna, known as the Followers' Rest. We'll talk about them. Jan Tomil, we've talked about them. Agricultural center of Xopatl since the fall of Chidanza. And the Chidanza are ruins that, basically it fell when the river dried up in 4622. And then Yanti Ilunde, their religious center. It was the hometown of the last hero god born in it during its ancient history. The Zilpatzi. And it suffered a lot because it used to log the Manazogo forest before it became too dangerous. And of course, Zilpantan. And then, of course, a city that we do know a lot about, much more than any of the others. Cough, cough, featured in a book, cough, cough, as Jozlapan, which is the city of flowers. It's the extreme northwest of Xopatl, near the Tumaja Mountains, and is nexus of the Veins of Creation. So keep that in mind. The Veins of Creation, which are kind of not working, those ley lines, this was the nexus of it. That's why it's an important place here, the City Flowers. It might be one you want to look into. Okay. There's the settlements. Let's talk about who lives there and what else lives there. With a chupacabra. That's not a person, but it's a creature that lives there. So most humans that are there are Brazilanti humans. There are also Belvirus, Calderu, some dwarves, halflings, orcs, skinwalkers, wirewood that are all majorities. And beyond the settlements of Xopatl, it's a dangerous monster-filled place. So it's an area that, yes, you have these settlements which are pretty well settled, these cities and stuff, but if you're traveling between them and you're not traveling on the main roads, you're facing danger. Now, Xopatl does maintain good relations with its 3 neighboring countries. It actually does. With Razlatan, Nalmiraz, and Inapaza. And they've been increasingly strengthened by the exchange of resources. It is still one of the major exporters of magic items in Arcadia, and tourism between all 4 of these nations is very frequent to see some of their great sites. So it's sort of like, this region is very stable. They're all on good terms, and they all work together pretty well. It's a thing that has helped Xopatl, even in this time of unfortunate need, where things have changed significantly with the, destruction of a lot of their ability to handle things. They're with the loss of, unfortunately, the Veins of Creation. Now, what else lives there? We can talk about the monsters and creatures that live there. Because if you go beyond the settled regions of Xopatl, there are a lot of monsters in the remote reaches. And mundane things, there's uroks, coyotes, giant crabs, deers, eagles, mountain lions, reef claws, tumbaros, wolves, and a lot of places in there. There are more dangerous creatures, boulets, chupacabras, as seen here, death worms, some kinds of megafauna of all kinds, sargoisis, and thunderbirds. But they're not quite common, but they are out there. There are also some rarer, even more than that, and no less dangerous in some of the really unsettled reaches that include Chanaquests, Xopatls of all kinds, various sorts of drakes, Enchantados, Eonoras, various types of Naga, the more commonly water and dark Nagas, Sayunas, Tunchas, and Xopatls. That's a lot of creatures. I'm reading off here. You can look them up yourself. There's a lot of different monsters. If you're going to use them to explore Xopatl. But, hey, there we go on Xopatl. And certainly we could maybe learn about more of their cities, maybe get a little bit in depth in their history and stuff like that. But I feel like there's a pretty good chunk of information here about Xopatl. It's one of the nations explored there. And it's a very interesting nation because it is an old democracy. It is an ancient democracy. It's probably the older democracy than the ones you will find within Avastion. It might be one of the oldest in Golarion. And granted, it was built by people that, it's an interesting thing to say that it was built by people that had the power to build it. People that were oppressed. And they found power and used that power to break their oppression, and then were maybe wise enough not to become oppressors themselves, which is a very impressive thing. Those ancient hero gods of Xopatl, the settlers, the ones who settled it, it's interesting to see they didn't go that far. Oh, and I can mention the religions. Apuk and Xopatl are two of the deities in the region there that are worshipped. They're the evil and good deities of that kind of the dualistic deities of the region. But Xopatl is on the decline. It relied on its magic. And Eridan's death, because of his meddling, has hurt them greatly. It's an interesting thing that they see Eridan really negatively, while a lot of places in the world still see him as this great god that died and did great things. But Eridan has caused their decline over the last century. His death and his connecting to what they once had. The ley lines, the tree, the veil of creation, the Kamara tree, the veins of creation. I'm sorry. They did such damage to that because of that, and it's interesting to see that they're still surviving beyond that. And will they be able to find a new foot? I don't know. Maybe they'll be able to find some form of recovery. They certainly still have a lot of skills, and they have something akin to the veins of creation left over. But even now, their country suffers because of this. And this rebirth may never occur. It's this interesting thing that one action of a powerful individual can have a repercussion that may see something devastating down the line for Xopatl. For now, they maintain. They have magic. They have power. They have a place in this world. And in a region that is stable right now. The ancient empire that once ruled this region has declined greatly and now is just a neighbor. A friend. They're way past their heyday. It's like if Italy we know now was still what would have been the Roman Empire, but they just collapsed down to Italy and maintained good relations. That the actual empire never fell and they just evolved into something new. It's an interesting fact that they have these, deep connections with the people there. And it's a region at peace. And yes, you can say there are plenty of other places at peace in Golarion, but certainly some of those tensions still exist in a lot of places. And maybe its lessons, its influence, could teach more of Golarion in a way. It's hard to say there, though, too, because it is a unique circumstance. But it's an interesting look on this area of the world and, you know, the cultures of these two continents. We know very little of Arcadia. And, you know, will that change? I don't know. It's a mysterious location that hopefully we'll learn more about. And maybe we'll learn about more nations in the future too. I can't say that either. But for now, we know about at least this nation in Arcadia, and we can talk about it, and it's very interesting cultures. And I hope you enjoyed learning about them. So we'll leave it there today, where we've crossed the ocean past what remains of Aslant to learn about a nation far off. Where an adventure path takes place in. Maybe you want to play that adventure path now. Or, you know, the entire thing has one adventure that takes place in it. I don't know if the other ones do. They might. I haven't looked into that adventure path very much. But if you want to see more content from me, you can always join me live on Twitch, or you can always go over to YouTube. It's a couple days later for the YouTube side. You know, hey, you guys, if you want to come join me live, it'd be great. My schedule for tabletop stuff for joining me live, again, it's a couple days afterwards that it goes up on YouTube. 1 or 2 days usually. Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays right now. Tuesdays, Thursdays, early afternoons. Thursdays are the Pathfinder day. Saturdays, early morning, a little before noon on that morning. Things could kind of change, though. My schedule's a little bit in flux right now, but I'll keep people informed of that. Wednesdays, that's on schedule. Pathfinder First Edition game. Crimson Queen, 9 p.m. EST. Come join us. Come check it out. Enjoy the show. You know, you get to see us live, do crazy, stupid stuff. We've had a lot of great episodes. I'd really recommend it. It's really fun. And, of course, over on Saturday at 6 p.m., I'm discussing tabletop. I talk about tabletop news of the week, deeper discussions at tabletop, all those interesting things. And if non-tabletop stuff, you want to check out some of my gaming or chatting or any kind of stuff like that, Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays. Usually kind of mid-morning, afternoon. I have Discord, Twitter, social media is linked down below. That's my schedule. That's what's going on. I've shouted all my stuff out. I've said to you guys all out there, there's great ways to support me. Just check out all my links. Check out all my stuff. Join me for more stuff. Watch more Pathfinder videos. I love chatting about Golarion lore a lot. It's always interesting, deep, and complex. And I love when they explore new areas and we see new and interesting cultures, new and interesting peoples, new and interesting things in it. And I just really enjoy it. So until the next time we talk about Pathfinder, Golarion, or another tabletop role-playing game, because I love talking about them, I bid all of you out there a deep and wonderful farewell.